These recordings will be posted on the city's website for public viewing and listening. In-person attendees of the meeting will be included in this recording. By remaining in this meeting, in-person attendees agree that their images and/or voices may be included in these recordings. With that, we have excused absences. I know Barrett is out of town and Samantha requested an absence due to religious holiday. So, anybody make a motion? Okay. Motion second. Okay, all in favor? Excuse me. Okay. All right. Thank you. Minutes for approval. We've been given those in our packet from the last meeting. And I guess if we'd like to make a motion and discuss, or any questions for staff, we can do all of that. Motion to approve. Motion to approve. Okay. Second. Thank you, Robert. Okay. All in favor? Approving the meeting minutes. Okay. Thank you all. Public comment. This is an in-person meeting. Comments may be made by attendees upon registering in-person meeting and indicating would like to speak. Meeting also publicly live streamed, but comments cannot be accepted during the meeting using those virtual methods. Communications from residents should be sent via email and addressed to Raleigh Stormwater at raleighnc.gov. I don't know if we have anyone here or public comment signed up. No. Not for public comment. Not for public comment. Okay. Oh, I didn't see his images. Did you sign up, Athena, to speak? Okay. We can provide a few minutes. Yeah.
Okay, if I didn't make it in time. More about creeks. My name is Athena. Doing a lot of passion projects towards the neighborhood creeks in the Terry branch. I wanted to kind of indicate and help conceptualize margin of error when it comes to creeks, property lines, and the type of meandering that creeks do with compounding effects of erosion. I'm trying to advocate that the existing easements and buffers that are around these creeks, if we are able to normalize the expectation of ongoing maintenance for both city purposes as well as third-party purposes, volunteer purposes, community purposes, then we're redefining how we perceive these stormwater creeks. I'm striving to get to a point of conversation where we can approach developers who may not have investment in the health of the creek itself and find ways to convert that property that is not accessible to public and redefine, renegotiate, again, conceptualize access. Longer segments of creek will help raise the efficacy of existing programs and efforts that the city already does. And if we're able to combine city efforts with community-oriented efforts and knowledge and education, then we're just moving in the right direction. So that's my plea. I did want to state that part of the margin of error is if property lines go straight to the middle of the creek and creeks wander, then property lines are. If we strive to assume property lines can be at the buffer zones and the easement and the creek itself is no longer an individual's property, then we are able to address more than the little sporadic efforts that we do. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you for your time and passion. With that, we'd like to go to the kind of planning commission and SMAC liaison part of the agenda. At this point, we're going to first hear, are we going to hear an overview, Ben, of cases and then dive into the individual case? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Well, I can try not to step into it. Sure. Yeah, these are just, only one new case, well, two new cases, counting the one we're gonna get a presentation on, but only one new case that I was actually talking about extensively. Yeah, so, at planning commission, there is a case in the northwest side of town on Barker Corporate Drive, which is changes to an existing zoning case. The two at city council are ones we've talked about before. They're at different stages of finishing up. And then the applicant presentation to the commission is Z11 and 2230 South Newton. So jumping right in. So this is the first one, Z2025 off of Arc Corporate Drive, which is actually behind the Briar Creek Shopping Center. If you guys are familiar with that. It's right here. Essentially, the shopping center is kind of on the left-hand side there. And this is more office and hotels and condos kind of behind it. And Briar Creek goes through. And essentially what they're looking for is, it's a previously zoned PDD from long ago. And they're looking to make amendments to allow for more residential and hotel units and basically more flexibility for some residential development out there. The only reason that I was really bringing this to your attention, because it is adjacent to Little Briar Creek, but also if anyone has been in Raleigh for quite some time, there in this area was the infamous Ford transformer site where they had a lot of chemical issues with the creek and PCBs. Essentially what that means is it's really, really imperative that sediment not get into Little Briar Creek. That's how PCBs naturally come downstream. It latches onto sediment and kind of goes downstream. So staff has been experienced with this with the rest of the development out here. We just wanted to bring that to your attention. No reason to kind of set up a red flag or anything like that. It is out here. But it's a fairly standard one. Just wanted to bring it to y'all's attention, just in case you hear something about the area and that sort of thing, because Ford Transformer is a pretty famous site in this portion of town as far as environmental impacts, creeks and such. But there are no stormwater conditions now, and it is set to be heard by the Planning Commission Committee of the Whole on October 23rd. And essentially, the Committee of the Whole is a subcommittee of the Planning Commission, which is just like the name says, it's the entire Planning Commission sits on a committee. They can talk about cases in more depth and detail and that sort of thing. So feel free to attend that, but that will be to the full Planning Commission probably until November. And then after that, it will go on to City Council, be set for public hearing. So it's still got some time ahead. And I know that's something that was talked about at the last meeting, like being more of a head start on some of these cases. So it's kind of a way to kind of kick that off.
Sorry, you said there are no restrictions on the site, correct?
No. It's just, it's imperative the sediment doesn't reach into Little Briar Creek, because that's where the PCBs can kind of attach the sediment.
But it's not like a hazardous waste site or anything.
So these are the areas that are undeveloped, that are getting some of the planned development district limitations change for more residential units.
Yeah, I'd say any other questions?
Yeah, I just had a general question on there, and I so appreciate kind of bringing this to the forefront. So I think keep the discussion open for just knowing the sensitivity, the potential risk here. Could you maybe remind me, maybe as well, the options or kind of what kind of engineering options are there to kind of keep that sediment in? How practical is that given the high risk? What other kind of construction type design to be in there to ensure that it isn't be full?
Yeah, they can definitely do anything besides more silt fence on site, especially around that creek if they're working around there. And then also different types of silt fence and doing kind of a treatment train, kind of like double treatment before it gets to the creek, like instead of like one sediment basin and then kind of outlet, we could have multiple sediment basins kind of treated like that. So
Okay.
there are ways to get around.
And that's not anything to do with any of the conditions, literally that would be in maybe a recommendation as far as how they design, like we're going to plan out the construction of the project.
Either one.
Okay, right now,
Obviously, the condition would need to be volunteered by the applicant.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it's more of a, if this is sensitive, right now they don't have any restrictions, just hope that they would implement some of these.
Yeah.
Too.
And, and, until me or Sally attend the meeting on the 23rd, I'm not even sure if we were talking about working in the area by the creek, so I'm not even sure. So they may not be concerned with the area here. That makes you get this area.
Were there any conditions on the adjacent properties when they were developed?
This was all kind of one big planned development district, so it was all kind of one big thing.
And there were none. And there were none.
Okay. To answer your question, I apologize. More questions?
Thank you.
All right. So this is one that we've already seen, we talked about, currently, the public hearing for this one will be held on the next council meeting, which is on Tuesday. And it is currently zoned R6, and they're rezoning that to NX4, which means they can build like a 4-story building, probably apartment building, or something or mixed use like that. They are maintaining the conservation management district here, divided into two maps kind of next to each other to kind of show the conservation management district that already exists, that they're not touching, and how it just relates to the floodplain. It's pretty much, we're right on it. So, currently there are no stormwater conditions, and the applicant is planning on keeping the development out of the Walnut Creek floodplain. Any questions on this?
So this is not yet approved, right?
No. It'll be a public hearing on Tuesday, so it could potentially get approved, or it could get deferred, depending on if they need more information.
Maybe so there, the applicant is not planning on doing any kind of development construction in flood. Okay,
Yeah.
it's only, yeah.
This is the area, so it's undeveloped. So, and a power line, so beside the conservation management, we would have a restriction to keep them from developing floodplain area per FEMA code, unless they would do some sort of a map change.
But they have not restricted themselves. Building.
Besides the conservation management,
Okay, in the CM.
yeah, the conservation management
Which basically overlays.
is our most restrictive zoning district environment. And this one is off of Glenwood in the northeast area of town. It was actually approved at the last council meeting. Lincoln Drive, Winchester Drive, commercial area in this section. And this is the one that was going to a little higher density and more stories and kind of more split up. There were different stormwater conditions as far as using super silt fence, which is another method of silt fence. It's a little bit harder than regular silt fence. Third-party construction inspections and specific details about the SCM and specifying where the outfalls for stormwater would actually occur on the site. And so that was approved at the last council meeting, which was on September 16th. Any questions about this one? And this is the one that the applicant is here to discuss today. It's 2030 South New Hope Road. If some of you are familiar with southeast part of town, it's part of the old town development project, which has been in the planned development district since 2006. But it's had certain changes since then. But it's been in the midst of being developed for a while. This is the main, this area to the right here is the main area of Old Town. This is more of a, not an offshoot, but just a piece across from New Hope Road. Right now, their current zoning is CX5 conditional use, and they're keeping the CX5, but just changing a few of the conditions to amend them, and I'll let the applicant get into that. No change to storm conditions, except the current condition is one that floodplain fringe development at 40%. And let the applicant get into that as well, but that would technically be above and beyond what our 50% restriction is. And the public hearing is to be set, so not the public hearing itself, the date for the public hearing will be set at next Tuesday's council meeting. And it's a kind of a weird property, and I'm sure the avenue will get into this. It kind of horseshoes around this area here, which is actually a Raleigh pump station. Area, can show you, but Old Town, if anyone's driven by it or seen it, has had a heavy residential development push in the past few years. There's, a lot's been platted, construction, things like that. And, but beyond that, I don't think any motions are yet. With that, I will switch presentations and let, Mike Birch.
Yeah, real quick,
Yeah.
I guess, would anybody in the commission, do we feel like any of the cases that were previously presented, would we like a deeper dive on any of those? Have an applicant come or anything like that? Anyone want to make a motion about any of those cases that we just received the information, but like, I didn't hear a lot. We're okay with the information we'll proceed. Thanks, Ben.
And I'll be questions.
Okay.
On this one too, so I'm not going.
Thank you, Ben. Michael Birch with Longleaf Law Partners here with the applicant for C1125. Also have Mark Richardson here with me with the Greenway Residential, who is the applicant for this case. So give a little bit of overview of the property, kind of where we are, what our request is, why we're going through it, and then we'll focus on some of the comments we heard from Planning Commission, our work with stormwater staff, a look at the floodplain and the site relative to the floodplain, and then we'll propose for you all two new conditions related to the floodplain. So, again, got some images later on that will kind of more clearly help you understand the property, but essentially two brothers own property on the west side of South New Hope. This parcel here, and then actually this parcel then goes to the north of this area. So two brothers, we are working with one of them, have tried to put the other property under contract. He has no desire to do that. So these properties, both of them are currently zoned already for CX. So that's kind of commercial mixed use up to 5 stories with some conditions, which I'll show you. And so the intent of that was to allow for some intense commercial use on that side. We are proposing to keep that zoning district the same, right? CX 5. But the one change is to allow residential. Back in 2019, the group that had these two properties under contract were commercial developers. So when they were rezoning the property, they prohibited residential. It's been 6 years, and actually the owners had marketed the site for commercial for about 5 to 8 years prior to that. And because of the lack of visibility, right, I mean, it's off the intersection, all of this is pretty unbuildable here. It's in floodplain, et cetera, so where those things, those trees can't be removed. And so there's really no visibility from that intersection, et cetera. So after 10 plus years of not having any interest, talking with a lot of people, but no interest, they've been working with Mark's group to allow residential on that site. Yeah, we can, this just shows the zone. So Ben mentioned it where we are. So we've been to the Planning Commission, and I'll kind of allude to our discussion there. We will be at City Council on October 7th. That's this coming Tuesday. In addition to being able to schedule the public hearing that date, they also have the option to hold it at the table. And again, we'll kind of get into that with the proposed conditions that we have. That may affect scheduling the public hearing on Tuesday versus holding it at the table, coming back in 2 weeks once we've added those conditions for them. In which case then the public hearing could be on the first Tuesday of November. Short. Okay, so here, given the site's proximity to floodplain. Right, so again, the area that we're rezoning is this portion and then up here. That's all one tract, but it doesn't include this or the area up there. So when it was rezoned back in 2019, and I'll just kind of, these are about uses, how much intensity is allowed, et cetera. This last one was added towards the tail end. And that limited lot coverage or fill within the floodplain area to a max of 40%. Now, at the time, in 2019, that was before the council changed at this time, the code allowed up to 50% lot coverage or fill. So that 40% was a little bit more restrictive. After this case was approved, 2020, city then amended the regulations to prohibit all fill, all lot coverage within the floodplain. And so when we filed our case, we just removed that. We removed this condition because we felt like the new regulation was more restrictive. Right? But in working with Raleigh Stormwater staff, she thought, okay, well, even though the standard is 100%, there are some options for being able to develop in the floodplain through the LOMAR process or kind of a no-rise study. So if you went through that process, then theoretically you could fill more than 40%. And so in order to kind of, our intent was to always maintain and be consistent with that prior condition. And so we worked with staff to add that back in. So, in the event that we were to go through the no-rise, the LOMAR process, we would still be limited to 40% impact. We don't have the intention of going through that process. So this is just to kind of summarize what I said, right? 2019, when the condition was added, standard allowed 50%. Then TC 20 adopted in 2021, prohibited all fill, again, unless there's kind of two exceptions. And so that's how we ended up here to kind of be as restrictive as the 2019 condition. So I wanted to zoom in on kind of the two developable areas. This one is kind of on the northern side. You can see that is the lift station there. So the city of Raleigh has an easement around that, an easement for access to that, and which will not be affected. So you can see really from a floodplain, actual floodplain on the site, you really have just that area. Give you a sense of elevation, right? We're kind of at about 200 or so at the road, which kind of dips down a little bit, 192, 190 here. So really the balance of the site is you still have a 190 contour here. So you're looking at about 183 to 184 elevation around the floodplain. But again, our buildings, we anticipate being kind of here towards the road up there, which is all kind of high ground, well above the elevation around the floodplain. This is the southern site. So it's a little twisted. So this is the Rock Quarry, New Hope Road intersection here. So the site we just talked about is up this way. So here, we've got some more kind of floodplain actually on the site. Here, the elevation in this area here is about 183 to 184, and that stays pretty consistent, 185 to 86, 186, and get back to that 184, 185 over there. As you can see, high range above 190 outside. So wanted to kind of give you all a sense of the working concept. Let me be clear, because we're still in the rezoning stage, we can't submit a site plan to the city right now. Obviously, we're trying to understand how the site would lay out, et cetera. So this is the current thinking. And let me go ahead and just zoom in on, so these are the two areas. What we've done is kind of overlaid the site plan and the floodplain. Here's the zoomed in, so you can kind of see. So here's kind of the extent of the floodplain. there, and then it shows kind of the anticipated finished floor elevations of those buildings. So in most places, call it 6, 7, at least 6 or 7 feet above the, elevation on the, of the floodplain. Certainly gets more as you get closer to the road. And you say we're staying what is here really planned east of the lift station. So you can see kind of how close we are to the road. And both from a distance and elevation, how far we are from the edge of the floodplain. So this is the site closer to the intersection. Right, so here's kind of the developable area here, right? We were kind of in that 185, call it, or so elevation here, right? So given how the site comes off the road, we will be bringing soil in. Really any development, whether residential or commercial, will be bringing fill into the site, obviously outside of the floodplain, but to make it level, to bring it up the elevation a little bit closer to the road. So again, you see the finished floor elevations of these buildings well above, the floodplain. Following planning commission discussion, and I'll touch on that a little bit. The primary discussion in planning commission, and kind of coming from a few folks in Old Town and to the north, was a desire to keep it commercial, right? To require commercial on this site. Now, because the brothers' property here in the middle is not part of this rezoning, right? Essentially, no residential is allowed on that, right? That's also, once we're zoned for residential, that really can't be, that's not enough land to be its own residential project. And so, this again will remain more commercial. And let me say also, just to then reference Old Town and the residential development around it, this area here has always been considered the kind of commercial center serving Old Town. Now, apartments are also allowed here. This was, you can see it's already graded, it was going to be an apartment site. They're actually coming back in to modify their conditions, but what they've said publicly, et cetera, is kind of a grocery anchor, kind of commercial development with apartments next to it. So this, obviously, given the residential adjacent to it, is much more conducive to the commercial. So. And then the addition to the, other than the desire to keep it commercial, there was concern just about proximity to the floodplain. Our obviously response was, listen, it's not like we're going from low density residential to commercial for the first time, or higher intensity residential. This site, significant amount of retail, office, et cetera, allowed on the site today. And again, in kind of development can develop to the extent that it want to, given the floodplain limitations. And we are not asking to kind of decrease or increase our ability to develop above what is allowed today, other than for residential. Coming out of that discussion about kind of residential near the floodplain area, talked with stormwater staff after the meeting, and we'll be proposing these two new conditions. One is to be very express about keeping buildings outside of the floodplain area. And then also to keep essentially any of the roads or drives serving those residential buildings outside of the floodplain as well, so that there's no decreasing the risk that a fire access route would be compromised in the future because of flood event. So a lot of information, but yes.
You mentioned back to the other.
I'd just like to say thank you for taking the time to present to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely, sorry. Just a quick question on that one. So the building, maybe it's, or that, if you don't mind going back to the map. So we say no building, is that like no development in the floodplain or just no physical buildings? I just want to make sure I'm.
Yeah, so no physical buildings. I mean, and what we are showing is even like retaining wall outside of the floodplain as well. Again, we don't anticipate any structures
Okay, yeah,
within
this is,
floodplain.
it's super, it's been a moment.
Yeah. And I think we can maybe further clarify that.
We won't avoid doing any flood studies, right? By doing that.
Correct. We don't want to go through the Clomar Process or don't anticipate going at all through the no rise analysis either.
But the land that's currently a floodplain to be undisturbed.
Correct.
Sarah?
I have a few questions. So you said earlier that the public hearing will be set on October 7th, but, any comments from the community members will be welcome.
So, not at the October 7 meeting, because that's kind of just kept at the council table. So
Okay.
essentially like the planning commission report is being given to the council, and then council can either decide to hold the case at the table at that time or to go ahead and schedule the public hearing.
Okay.
So I think because we want to add these two conditions from a process standpoint, we will be asking to be held at the table so that we can add these
Okay.
conditions, because we want the public hearing to be noticed with these conditions part of the case. So we would come back to council on the 21st of October. And again, they're kind of back in a situation where they're only scheduling the public hearing. They typically schedule public hearings for the first Tuesday of the month, because that's when the evening session is. So, granted, that's election day, I believe November 4th, not for city races, but for some races in the area. But I think their meeting is still on that day. So that's the earliest that we would have a public hearing for members of the public. Keep time.
On the new proposed conditions, are those include the conditions from the neighborhood meeting or do they have any proposed conditions during the neighborhood meeting?
So coming out of we've held 2 neighborhood meetings, and we've also been to the Southeast Citizen Advisory Council. Again, there were no requested conditions coming out of those meetings. Again, their desire was, well, we just want commercial to be developed there. That was really the primary thing we heard from the neighborhood meeting. They had questions about how many units, so we did condition down
175.
to 175 here.
I was actually at the Southeast CC meeting in one of the neighborhood and I was just wondering because the old town rezoning across the street they're trying to change the condition of that from 400 residential unit to 625.
Yes.
And you're trying to develop a 175 unit over there. And I think both of this rezoning, the community members have been asking for a grocery store, which the old town rezoning here has been saying that we will provide if or after we build the 625, but there could be triggers, so there could be a possibility that the grocery store might not even come. And I was just wondering, because when I heard from what I heard from the community people that is in that rezoning that you guys are working on, they also want a grocery store. So I was just
You mean
wondering.
on this piece here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, are you guys talking? Is there any collaboration in like providing that? Because I live right there. Like, no, there, yeah, I'm like right across that.
Yeah.
So we didn't even hear about this case, until we talked to the community members. But I was just wondering if there's any collaboration, like talk with the 2 rezoning on providing that and making sure it will actually happen, not after the development is already done.
So a little background on this property here. That was rezoned back in 2019. It was a separate case, but went through at the same time. So the current allowance on this property is it's allowed for a lot of commercial. It also allows for currently up to 450 apartments. My understanding is, yes, they have come in for a change to those conditions, seeking up to now it sounds like 625. I think it was 650 at one point, but my understanding is whether they've added the condition formally or not, they are essentially saying, we're not going to build, we can't build over 450 until we do a grocery store.
Oh, so not the whole 600 plus.
That's right. They can't go above what they're allowed to do today
Mhm.
until they, provide a grocery store commercial. I'll just say, this is a much larger developable area with much better access than the site over here. So I mean, this is the place to locate commercial, particularly a grocery store. Here, because of the limitation, the depth issue off of the road, there is not nearly enough room to do a grocery store because of all the parking that they want, and then because of all the service area and roads behind it that is needed. So the grocery store, dating back to the 2019 cases, was always anticipated over here. I think what was a possible thing over here was maybe fast food restaurant or something like that. But again, both before the 2019 rezoning and certainly since, the broker who has been marketing these properties for that entire time, while they've had a number of conversations with a lot of different users, all of them have come back and said the same thing, which is lack of visibility and lack of good access. Another thing that the grocery store and all the grocery stores have looked at this area, this site here. And even knowing, right, all of the residential that's getting developed in Old Town, they were still hesitant because of the lack of a number of rooftops, a number of
So
residential.
interesting.
Yeah,
Because
so
there's no grocery store there.
That's right.
Nothing there.
that's right. But even once Old Town got started and knowing all the residential density over here, they remained hesitant because of the lack of essentially density in the area. Did I touch on everything that you asked about? Okay.
I guess the dialogue in particular about the floodplain, sediment control, stormwater, anything like that. Do we have questions? The applicant?
Or maybe you touched on this one and I was trying to visualize the different areas. So, as far as the development, are there any kind of, plans while you're developing that land to further protect during development to make sure that none of it go this similar?
Yeah, so erosion control
Correct.
standpoint. So, to be frank, that's not something that we, one, have been prompted to think about, either through staff review or, planning commission or community review. But I think that's certainly something, that we could consider, just again, given the proximity, obviously the sensitivity. I think we're familiar with kind of the conditions that you all have suggested in the past in terms of the heightened erosion sediment control conditions. So I expect that that's probably something we want to add as well.
Yeah.
I appreciate the consideration and speaking of all of us and explaining that. Also, it's great to see the conditions added on there to not develop plans or undisturbed.
Yeah, I think I would just maybe see or suggest, whether or not we make a full motion or not, but I would suggest a little more clarification to what buildings means, buildings or structures and just fire apparatus road, as I certainly understand, but does it mean parking lots or not parking lots, that could paved surfaces or something,
That makes
and then it would be, I know that, like, I would second what Nicholas said, is about the idea about sediment erosion control measures, it'd be nice to see something again, so.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, just to your point about, parking areas, again, maybe it's better here. Again, I think what we're currently showing, right, is that I think, we don't have any parking or drives, whether it's fire apparatus access roads or not, within that floodplain area again, because I think even that would constitute fill and would require
Yeah.
going through that no rise process, which again, we don't have the desire for, the expectation for, but we can clarify.
Just make clear, simplify or eliminate questions moving forward, I guess. So,
One of the other one, and not again knowing much about the kind of building design and this graphic here, is it seems like a lot of the buildings, do you mind just briefly talking about in planning and designing this, the ratio of kind of parking lot space to the building? You know, just seeing that,
Kind of like spaces per unit. you
or,
mean?
yeah, or however you consider that, that would be just helpful context, you know, just in seeing that space, obviously you know, condensed it to the area outside of that, but even just seeing, you only have, there's not that many buildings and almost like half the space is parking lots. And you had an impervious for that, if you don't mind
Yeah.
explaining that just for
Absolutely.
my relative.
So, you know, kind of the minimum parking ratio, and I think we're actually kind of below from a market standpoint, like what the expectation is on a per unit basis. I believe we're at like 1.7 spaces per unit.
Okay.
Now, the unit mix here is a variety of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, but kind of the rate on a per unit basis, regardless of the number of bedrooms, is a ratio of about 1.7,
Okay.
which is, when you look at kind of maybe your more standard townhome developments, or even kind of some of the larger apartment developments, this is below what that typical ratio is.
Guess would we want to make a motion or would you just want to make suggestions? I know Samantha had previously, as our planning commission liaison, had relayed some concerns to Nicola and I believe that the proposed conditions definitely take care of her concerns. So, yeah. And I would say, you were not required to show us a site plan. And so it is greatly appreciated to physically see something because it's a conditional rezoning. Site plans are not required and, you know, do appreciate that you're bringing that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, given the property shape and being able to kind of understand the relationship and proximity of buildings and development area to the floodplain, we felt it was really necessary to kind of help visualize that.
Yeah, that's what, I think that was our concern last meeting is
Yeah.
there was so much floodplain,
Yeah.
thinking that you're gonna
Right,
come in and just
you have-
build
how you
it
gonna
all
do it? Yeah.
with retaining walls and everything everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's, I know you're not held to that, but that's very helpful to see, to conceptualize it.
And I think that's why, from a condition standpoint, right, even though we're not necessarily tied to like the buildings, but as you can see, like, there's really, the buildings are what's you know, kind of on the outside with parking in the middle, so it's not as if the buildings could really get any closer, but I think the conditions that we're gonna add, maybe erosion sediment control, will kind of, at minimum, kind of reflect what we're showing here.
I think what Nicholas suggested is, you know, there's an art to writing conditions and
Yeah.
maybe massage things a little bit.
Yeah, I think we'll clarify
Make it clear.
the ones that we've got here, and then also from an erosion sediment control, I know staff has kind of prepared some, you know, model language.
I think we have a potential motion.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that, you know, we continue to support based on the direction of this discussion, and hopefully like to see the language back in a modified language. But given that that's going in the right direction and an alignment here, I definitely support seeing that modified version before a formal support.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I think there's a ton of positivity in the dialogue. I think we like exactly where it's going, like
Yeah.
Nicola said, and I don't know if we need to, if it stays in that direction, there's no need for us to formally review this again.
Yeah.
Yet, if there are questions or concerns from staff or, you know, whatnot, we would like to review it again. However that motion goes. Help us, Wayne?
Mike, do you have an anticipation of when they would set the actual public hearing?
Yeah, so I think if, my current thought process is, right, we're at the council table on Tuesday. I would anticipate that we would ask to be held there, not set the public hearing, but go ahead and add these 2 conditions and, you know, clarifying language as well as, likely the erosion sediment control conditions. I think that would then bring us back to council on what will be October 21st. At that time, if they chose to set the public hearing, the earliest they could do that would be November 4th. So that's still before SMAC meets next.
Right.
And then their next meeting in November is that week of Thanksgiving, which would be maybe not the week of it would be Tuesday, the 18th. Would be, again, another possible date. I think maybe when we were here for the Honeycutt Road case up in the Falls watershed, I know we didn't have language finalized yet. We kind of worked with staff. I think there was a recommendation of approval or however you style it, based on us kind of getting the language worked out with staff, but
Yeah, could do something. Subvert you.
A modified motion to update the supported rewording of those and potentially the additional one on erosion control and support that as a project, supporting that additional language and.
So the motion is to support moving forward with the
Second that.
motion. All in favor of moving forward? Thank you very much.
thank you all very much.
Next up, we have commission and staff updates and matters of importance. I think. Sure.
So your FY work plan was in the package as well as a draft work plan. There is an agenda item later in the agenda to review that in a little bit more detail and review the SMAC annual report. The version in the package of the work plan were, I think there were some minor tweaks that were suggested at your last meeting, which should be reflected in there, and we'll have time to provide any final comments. Ideally, the plan would be, and we can talk about this later, to bring pass this and then schedule when to bring it to council. We'll talk about the options there a little bit later. The bylaws, the draft SMAC bylaws are in your package as well. Those are being reviewed by the city attorney's office right now. We're really just providing you those to get familiar with them. As mentioned last time, the boards and commissions are trying to standardize the bylaws for different commissions using the city's new template. And Scott Brandt's done a nice job incorporating our old bylaws into the new template. I really don't see any substantial changes to how we operate or the bylaws at all from the way the template was set up. I think it was actually our bylaws were used much for the template because it had a good standard format. But please do review those. No need to act on those today. This is information when the city attorney's office does bring back, and if there are any modifications, we'll bring that back to you. Otherwise, we'll let you know when it's time to act, but we're not quite ready to act on those yet. The rainwater rewards quarterly report is in your package. We'll have an opportunity if you have any questions on that report when Justin and Stephen come up with the next agenda item. No stormwater staff updates. High priority topics. There are some public meetings noted that upcoming October 4th, the Mugs and Markers at Optimus Raleigh and the stream monitoring at Walnut Creek Wetland Park activity. And then there are 4 projects with notices prior to construction. Worthdale Park stream restoration is getting underway. The Dunbar emergency repair is currently underway. We've mentioned that one before, and a couple drainage assistance projects that are gearing up here very soon. That is all I have, unless there are any questions.
Maybe we could tour one of those.
I'm sorry?
Maybe we could tour one of those finished products.
Be glad to, yes. In fact, we've been talking about upcoming tours potentially. One idea that came up is the Lions Park Green Stormwater Infrastructure Project, which is just wrapped up construction. And so we could look at having a SMAC meeting potentially at the community center there and tour that project. But yeah, any of these would be good options. If there are other projects that you hear of that sound interesting for a future tour, certainly let us know. The Lions Park is the one I think we've talked about. We also, though, have talked about, and I think we're planning for December, a tour of the Gibson Plate Plaza, which has some stormwater features as well, and having a SMAC meeting at, out at Dick's Park in the Dick's Chapel.
Any questions for Wayne? Okay, Stephen and Justin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Two quick updates on Raleigh Ring reports. As Wayne mentioned, your quarterly update is in the backup packet, and it may be our final quarterly update because as y'all recall, or may recall, the updated policy is going to city council here in the next couple months. We're shooting for the November 18th date, and that would in essence turn it into an annual report to the commission. So staff's working on preparing for that city council meeting and this policy revisions. So today we have, looking forward to project review, we have two here. One we have kept, as you'll notice in your backup documents, as part of our modified consent agenda. And then we have staff at full one, the Albemarle Avenue for additional discussion. And just a reminder to the commission, the basis for our modified consent agenda. All of the projects that remain on that consent agenda are below the cost effectiveness cap and the nitrogen removal cap. They're all fairly typical. And when I say fairly typical, pretty much directly comparable to the 280 projects that the program has seen and the commission has seen in the past. And so happy to take any questions on the first project or however you want to structure it. I know there's one in the modified consent, and then I have slides and further discussion on the second one on the Albemarle Avenue.
Yeah, any questions on the first one and or anything you think we should know, Justin? Special?
Not on Bridle Run, just a pretty straightforward rain garden.
Okay. I guess I would like to see if anybody would like to make a motion to approve that one. Luann, okay. Bullet seconds, okay. All in favor of approving Bridle Run? Okay. So moved. Okay, and if you want to jump into the second.
So the second project, and I'd like to first mention, Mr. Shell is present today. He is the applicant. He's here available to answer any questions I may not be able to answer. And we have been working with Mr. Shell for maybe 2 years, year and a half. So we've been in communication over that time. And I also want to back up a little bit, pulling a project from the consent agenda, it's not that strange. That is how we used to do business for all projects that have come before the commission. And we just want to make sure that we inform the commission of any conversation. Things are slightly different with each application. So the outcome is the same for these projects, just like your consent agenda. It's either approve, deny, or request additional information and bring back at a further meeting. So this project, this is a complete application that we have received. It is for 2 cisterns to capture the runoff on the roof, the entire roof of the house. And you'll notice the 2 cisterns depicted here, 2 circles. We also have a rain garden that will be capturing a shed and some driveway runoff that is located on the rear of the house. So all this plus some pervious landscape on this slope that will go down to a rain garden. So you're capturing 3,200 square feet of impervious surface and almost 2,000 square feet of pervious. For the total cost, as you'll see here, the total cost is right at $39,000. It is eligible for the 100% cost share. It ranks approximately 3rd most expensive of any project that we've supported on a single family home residence. that the 25% cost share amount that would traditionally be owed he would be eligible for cost share from the Office of Sustainability Funding, 100% funding program. So as stated, staff worked with the applicant for several months. It really worked them to try to improve this application, and we had 3 outstanding questions that we shared with Mr. Shell, and he has since responded to those 3 with the help of his contracted engineer. And I'm just going to run through them. Probably the smallest concern up to the largest concern of the 3. So it's just the bulk of the map here. So the first just dealt with the inflow pipe into the cistern system. It shows currently a 3-inch pipe that collects everything on the entire house, and then it eventually makes it to a 4-inch pipe right at the inflow. And that is just a concern where a single pipe to capture during a large rain event, that the entire home. In response, Mr. Shell worked with his engineer and provided a capacity analysis, sealed calc showing where in ideal conditions that pipe size would be sufficient for a flash storm. Staff would feel that there would have to be some additional maintenance awareness and concerns to make sure that ideal conditions exist here. And the other concern is the suggestion of maybe having a secondary pipe or a larger pipe size as these downspouts are connected. So I'm happy to move through these 3 first, and we can circle back if that works well. And here is the sealed calculation report that was provided by his engineer. Moving on to the second item, it had to do with the electrical component for the cistern system. Historically, the cost of the installation of a dedicated electrical line for a cistern pump is eligible for cost share. And the applicant, was pursuing that as an eligible cost. The initial estimate included several things that historically have not been eligible for cost share. Included, a secondary panel and a shed, being that was located closer to where the cisterns were at. And a few other items. Mr. Shell took it back to one other thing I noticed, that initial quote did not include trenching in it. So staff asked them to revise this estimate and come back to the program. He did revise the estimate. Those items were removed, and then trenching was added. So this was received only a couple days ago, so it is not reflected in the total cost that is represented on these slides. But I wanted to show that those items were removed, but the overall cost would increase if we decide to move forward with the project by about $158 increase. Then the third item, which was probably the largest challenge for staff, really dealt with per anecdotally from Mr. Shell, but challenge for the applicant was obtaining 3 clear estimates. And we had 3 estimates come in. One was a clear and absolute value in number for the project. The other 2 came in ranges. And so that forced staff to utilize the high end of every range as a competing bid to that one value. Staff requested that the applicant reach back out to either these contractors or other contractors to obtain some additional bids, or some bids that had some comparable or absolute values that we could compare. As a result, he was unable to obtain some additional quotes. One actually increased after that inquiry. Please correct me if I'm misrepresenting anything. And so what we have is one bid that went unchanged, and then one bid that went up, and one bid no response, but 2 of which are all in ranges. So it's hard for staff to be able to convey to the commission line item comparisons or overall real bid comparisons when working with ranges. And they were the three main concerns that we had with the application. I have a few more slides depicting some of the design drawings that the engineer has prepared for the individual application. And I'm more than happy, Mr. Shell, if you need if I left anything out, or if there's anything you wanted to add, or if there's any questions of either one.
Thank you, Justin, for that. Looks like Mr. Shell would like to say something.
Hi, I'm Spencer. I am located on the east side of town near Longview Lake. I'm sure you're all familiar with that stormwater infrastructure project. I'm a 123rd owner of that lake, and this property is running, all the rainwater is running into that lake there. And I just thought this would be a great, there's a tributary stream down here that the property runs into. It goes down into the larger 12-acre lake there. And I was just very excited when I found out about the city doing cistern and rain garden programs. So that's why I'm applying and just trying to work out the kinks. Obviously, it's been difficult to try to get bids because I've had to wait a long time for different companies to actually get quotes, and then working with staff to get the application revised, and then the bids come back, 30, 40 grand more. Just inflationary things, I guess. And also, when we revised it, the rain garden size doubled from the initial RFP to the secondary RFP. So that was one of the considerations that changed a lot of the bids. I think the electrician got the second bid right. The initial quote you saw for the electrician was for initial RFP, which was like cisterns on different areas of the property. So we thought we were going to need 2 pumps and the initial RFP. But once the design process started, it centralized into one location. So now we're just putting one by those 2 cisterns. And I had the electrician include the trenching cost that was not originally, it was oversight from first quote to include that price, but he's going to have to trench a line now. It's an old 1961 house. I don't have exterior electrical. So it's kind of a process to get the electrical out of the house and into the pump cistern area. So thank you. Very excited about it, and happy to answer any questions on my have.
Yes, with that, do we have questions for staff, for Justin, or any?
I got a couple questions. First, can you explain to me said 75%, 25%?
Sure.
And you said it was eligible. So
Sure. So,
walk me through that.
yeah, I'll start at the top. So traditionally, applicants are eligible for either 75 or 90% of the cost, or eligible for 75 to 90% cost share. We have since stood up our 100% subsidy program, which will step in and cover that 10 or 25% applicant obligation if certain criteria is met, and one of which is income. One is if it is a nonprofit who's the owner of the property. And third, if it's affordable housing or rental rates being offered on the property. So staff have confirmed that this individual is eligible for the 100% cost share. So we treat the project as the traditional program would apply to it. So we're looking at it eligible for 75% cost share here, which would mean it would not require city council approval. It would not require a land use restriction, and it would be treated as a 75% cost share with a secondary source of income or funding to create the 100% final cost share payment. So hope that wasn't too wordy of an explanation.
No, that's great.
Can you explain that again? So because the 75% of the 38 is below the 30 threshold.
Yeah.
That's
Yes, sir.
that's not going. Okay.
Thank you, Grant.
Okay. Making sure.
Second question, what's the purpose of the pumps on the cistern?
The pumps on the cistern, as you can see, there's a pretty good slope here. So the slope helps in the fact that it increases how much water can go in that smaller pipe downhill. But you need to be able to get it back up the hill for irrigation. The program has historically supported the cost of pumps and, any sort of electrical component to make that happen. We don't support anything downstream of that spigot or outlet.
Okay.
So the cost is attributed to the electrical and, rain and the cistern.
I would say, and it's a good question, Stephen and I have broken down each individual aspect of the project to see which one is cost effective or more cost effective than the other. And the cistern is actually more cost effective of the two. I know once again, you're dealing with some slope here, so there's quite a bit, if you see the design the engineer came up with, it's a pretty robust, kind of unique, setup here with a lot of reinforcement on that downhill side. And I'm even under the assumption that is where that additional cost is coming. But once again, going back to the bids, we usually, you can say, hey, there's more cost wrapped up in this and that. Just one point, right? I don't have all the information here to convey.
Can you talk to us a bit about the process of getting 3 bids, just so we kind of understand
Sure.
the
But
issue of the ranges versus bids?
people have done it a different way, and to Mr. Shell's credit, he was very robust on the front end and went out with an estimate, and then after some feedback on sizing and hitting against the cap, some changes were made. So then he had to go back out and get some estimates again from some of the same folks. And so that was unique to this situation, I think. But I would say, generally speaking, how it will work, the applicant will determine what they want to do on the property. Either that is with using our application to determine those details, or soliciting the services of a design engineer, which Mr. Shell did. And then taking that plan or that application or a combination thereof and taking that forward for multiple contractors to get an estimate on install. And so that happened kind of piecemeal here. I think that's a fair way to say. So we're here with some bids that were reflective of maybe the initial design, and then an effort by the applicant to correct that with an updated design. Well, we've only seen those 3 that were provided. And did you reach out to others that I haven't spoken to, or?
I've reached out to all of the firms on the city provided list and also did external research to try to find who would bid on this project, because it's a design build project. Like where these firms, they design, they build. A lot of them do it that way because they want to be able to warranty their work. Whereas one company might not warranty knowledge, things like that.
So staff do provide a list of contractors who completed projects through the program in the past with clear direction that they're not recommendations, but that may be a starting point, and but that any contractor can participate.
Yeah, yes, Wayne.
Just in the ranges is a little unusual. Did the contractors provide a basis for why they had to give a range and couldn't just set the price?
Stephen and I spoke to one, and I think it is baked into the answer Mr. Shell gave about having one individual's engineered design and making that a challenge for them to install that design. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, the design build, I guess they were saying like their design is their property as far as the whole process goes. After them being design build. A lot of these other companies are charging a lot more for design. I just try to pick the cheapest one because that's the only one that's eligible for cost share. Since I'm on the 100% coverage with this for financial assistance.
So here's one of the estimates here. Here's one here too.
These are off of the initial RFP, not the second. So I think these ones are from Arrowhead. They had the higher one, it was like 94,000. So I don't know if that one was reflected here, but yeah, some of the second estimates that came back or a little bit higher.
What happens if the total cost exceeds 40 grand at the end, which would be more than 30 grand, 75%?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if another $102 more in your budget, this would go to, it would be, need to be recommended for approval by the commission to move forward. That would go to city council for ultimate review. If approved, it would require a land use restriction on the property around the features. And then that land use restriction be reported with the register of deeds for a 10-year period. So there is a significant threshold directly above this price.
And if that were to happen, that we would see it again, because we'd have to recommend it up to council. Or the dollars would be worked out behind the scenes to ensure that the request was never more than 75%. So.
Right, so even with the
I
revised,
just never paid it back, yeah, it'd be, the extra $100 would be taken care of, yeah.
if I understood correctly, the commission can vote to approve up to an amount, if that was the question. Is what the amount proposed today would, it does not exceed that, even with the revised electrical. The revision pulls the price up to 38898. That's where I got the 102.
And just for the record, can you reiterate the return on investment?
Sure. So for all our projects, it starts with your education outreach, your individuals, your in people's spaces, your educating folks about stormwater. From a wider community benefit, we are aiming to improve water quality. So you're capturing water that's carrying pollutants and keeping it on the property and reducing that pollutant load from entering your local streams. And then kind of ancillary to that is the program itself really thrives on taking that stormwater fee revenue in a small piece of it going back into the community. So there's some benefits there, both tangible and intangible for the program as a whole.
And it meets the metrics that we've set forth, the nitrogen metric.
Correct. This project is below the cap and it is a complete application.
I guess with that, if we have more questions, certainly.
I got one.
Yep, go for it.
Where does this rank in, like,
Nitrogen.
well, in costs for a single residential unit?
I got you. So,
Because I know we've done some commercial ones that are more expensive for a single residential.
single family home, the amount of eligible cost share amounts, we're going to focus on the 75% of the 38.1. It's the third most amount of funding that has been used to support a project on a single family. Across 280 projects, obviously 40 of those are probably not residential. So 220 projects, third highest amount.
Thank you.
Approximation there.
I was wondering, can you remind me what's the maintenance arrangement?
So for projects that are approved by the commission, it's a 10-year maintenance requirement, and that is, that's defined in a legal agreement that is executed between the city and the applicant. And it involves an annual check-in and sometimes may necessitate an annual site visit to confirm that the project is still close.
There's no cost associated with that.
Not from the city.
Okay.
Going back to that third most expensive part of the thing, do a lot of those projects do a combination of rain garden and cistern, or is that maybe just for like a cistern system or be for rain garden?
It's a good question.
Combined, it makes it complex, I think.
Yes, that's definitely one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it, and I think how the program looks at it, is from the amount of impervious surface treated. So you're capturing a lot of impervious surface. We've had projects on residential properties capture more, but we've also had obviously they capture less. So yes and no, there's plenty of examples the commission has seen that has been multiple project types. And there's some standalone large features that capture everything on the property.
You said there was a lake or something also that might benefit.
Yeah, they're directly adjacent to one.
Yeah.
So, 23rd, Lake, and that's what this parcel is tied to in registered deeds. There is a stream tributary that goes by left. So that's where this whole slope is draining down into, the upper creek, Long Lake, which is like 10, 12 feet out.
Yeah, it's like inside the belt line, just north of Newburgh Avenue, and the city did do, a dam, improvements project because it's Albemarle Avenue, it actually goes across the top of the dam. So that was the city's interest in doing the dam upgrades and repairs.
Reiterate in terms of.
Adjacent to, yeah, right. I guess we have the opportunity to approve, deny. Another option would be we could table this and ask for more information if we feel like there's more information to be gleaned. But I think if someone would like to make a motion one way or the other, with the information we have.
I think my concern is a lot of money for a single lot, single residential lot. The applicants provided all the information and done everything correctly, so it's not a problem per se with the what's proposed and maybe with our views.
Yeah.
And for a future discussion.
Yeah.
How we can apply that.
And I think that with that, even when we talked about the market changing on us as we sit here, that costs are not coming down for complicated, or for small site projects, costs are not dropping, right? Because there's always a little bit of fussiness with kind of doing work at this scale. But I do think we should think about that. Sounds like staff is supportive in that it's a full application. It's complete, it meets the metrics, so, discussion.
I've got a question. Have we ever talked about the cost of treating the water, the water treatment plant versus, I mean, is there any way to do that analysis of all these things? And, you know, if you were able to sort of expand so that we have an idea, are we getting good return on investment? You know, is it costs this much to treat this much water that's coming from Longview? You see, do you follow what I'm saying at all or no?
In terms of the dollar per pound of nitrogen.
Yeah, and, you know, so does it offset at all? Is there any offset whatsoever or no, and maybe not? And if there is, and even if it's minimum, you know, it's something. So just so we can sort of wrap our heads around, well, you know, it's doing this and that's good.
In general, these projects will be more expensive per pound of nitrogen removed than say a wastewater treatment plant because the nutrients are so concentrated in the sanitary sewer.
Right, that's what I assumed, but I didn't know what percentage this might. What this is doing versus, you know, the treatment plant obviously it's gonna be less expensive, but it's like a ballpark of what these sort of devices do.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. The main difference is here, you're able to tailor specific nutrient removal at a distributed location. For example, the lake, right? The treatment plant is only removing the nutrients from the entire Goose River where it's discharging.
Sure.
More or less, right? So I think that's the biggest difference between these distributed types of smaller projects versus a large scale wastewater treatment project.
Yeah, I just know we would have these discussions back at the state and the people, you know, some people would just say, well, you know, you're just gonna spend more money treating the water, you know, and so I never really did have a grasp on, you know, how much that cost was versus trying to do preventive measures so the nutrients didn't get into the system.
Discussion points, questions? We have to make a decision here. Approve, deny, or ask for more information.
Make a motion to approve based on the application presented.
Second.
A second.
Okay. She beat you to it, sorry. Okay. So
You
was
said
that
approve it.
approved based on the application, on the complete application? Presented, okay. Josh making the motion, Luann seconded, all in favor of that motion? Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Shell. We have the final work plan and annual report. So the annual report for fiscal year 25 and the work plan for 26. Ariel and Wayne will talk about some of the minor tweaks that have been made.
Yes, thank you very much. Ariel's here too. Thanks to Ariel for all both of these documents. And thanks to Scott Ryan for what he's done from his beginning facilitation in the work plan. Working with Ariel on the prioritization of issues. Thank you for everyone who voted, gave some feedback on that. I believe the annual report, were there any major tweaks on the annual report itself? So I don't believe that has changed, nor did we receive any specific feedback since the last meeting on the annual report. So the version that we've distributed of that is the same. If you'd like to move forward on any actions on that, and then we could talk about the work plan a little bit.
I think we probably need to approve them separately, I would think, so.
I think that would be
That makes sense.
easier and more appropriate to go ahead and do.
Guess with that, do we have any questions, comments, or would we like to make a motion and then have a conversation, but we have staff questions initially for Ariel and Wayne?
Glad to answer any questions if there weren't any other specific, the annual.
Would you like to make a motion to approve it? Josh is second, okay. All in favor of approving the annual report? Thank you, Ariel.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to the work plan. Thank you very much again for the voting and the input. I think one of the major changes in the work plan, especially from even last year, there was a lot more emphasis on the commission's interest in rezoning cases and providing review and input as appropriate related to stormwater issue and zoning cases. So you'll see that reflected as a little higher priority in this plan. Otherwise, a lot of the maybe go down to the high priority items, talk if you don't mind moving down to that. Otherwise, there were some similar themes and a lot of consistency with the city council's environmental resilience theme. And that was a big part. So help more residents access climate resilience programs. Go ahead and keep scrolling down, Tom. Keep neighborhoods safer from flooding. Implement smarter green stormwater infrastructure, supporting residents living in flood-prone areas. So those are the council themes related to environmental resilience that the commission is, and this overall work plan is supporting very, very clearly, I think. Just as an aside too, these council themes are the focus of the city's internal strategic plan. So we have just initiated internal strategic teams looking at these plans in more detail. So stormwater is very involved in specifically the green stormwater infrastructure and the flood prone and flood resilience items as well as strategic plan. Move on down. I think we have some high priority items that we talked about. The mission statements to support and advise reflected your input. I think that was good input. Again, anything that you see as in terms of comments, questions, please let us know. Here's the guiding themes too, which came from your input: sustainable and responsible growth, operational service effectiveness, education, outreach, and involvement, budgetary and fiscal stewardship, public health, public safety, and community resilience. Major themes here. And the high priority work items. So this, again, so this one rose to the top based on the voting. Engage with the planning commission, comprehensive planning, discuss cases, potentially create a subcommittee. And that's something that we could discuss too, if you all would like to continue in the fashion, or if there's a subcommittee you would like to create that would either meet otherwise to discuss any specific cases. Continue support for advancing floodplain management program. We've heard a lot of that. That came up as a high priority. Operational capital improvement budgets and utility fee rate. We will begin bringing more of the information about the proposed FY 27. Hard to believe we're talking about FY 27 already, budget. And typically we will start introducing that in December, January, with the plan to review, approve, and then bring that to city council afterwards, usually in March is budget season. Support continued advancement of flood early warning system program, heighten awareness of stormwater's operational services, including maintenance. Might be time to do for another tour here. We've done a tour of our maintenance group. I think it's been a couple of years now, so we have some new commission members since we've done that. So we put that on the agenda as well. Use of data and data analytics, new drainage systems and stream stabilization projects. You've seen some of those again here recently. And then watershed planning and related public engagement. And then the last few, heightened involvement with CIP, including field tours. Got a lot of good feedback on the tours. Plan to continue those. Advancement of green stormwater infrastructure action plan, including the GSI maintenance crew, which we plan to bring an update on the GSI maintenance crew, which is working diligently, and we've got some good metrics and feedback to bring back to you here soon related to that. And then finally, and understand this is a little lower on your list, a little lower, but more of an operational issue related to compliance with the city's MS4 municipal separate storm sewer system. Okay, acronym. That's our federal Clean Water Act permit that requires minimum measures that we meet and exceed pretty consistently. Area and stream buffer programs. This has been a topic that we've actually talked to council about, and looking at some options there. Riparian buffer, one of the ideas that we're starting to pursue is the state does allow delegation of riparian buffer compliance, and that is something that is in the state's court right now, but that we're looking at options that the city could get that authority delegated. So that's something we're pursuing as well. And then you saw a presentation a couple of months ago on our advancement of the pilot, what we're calling pipe inspection public engagement program. This is a program where we use our asset risk model to identify very high risk assets such as large stormwater pipes that are on project. And if that pipe failed, it would have public impact. So we are identifying those and offering private property owners the service of us to do condition assessment of those high risk assets so that we can identify early if there are concerns with some of those high risk assets rather than waiting for them to fail. And this idea actually stemmed from, you've seen the East Lane Street home, and where there was a sinkhole of a failure of a private pipe. It was private, but if that pipe had failed, would create neighborhood flooding and a lot of public infrastructure issues. So that's what we're trying to get ahead. And I think that's it. So, any questions, comments, input, or revisions proposed to the action plan? I will say Scott Bryant has done a nice job. Scott is always very detailed. He's already got these high priority items mapped out on a matrix, looking at the rest of the meetings for the next year and starting to fit in the spots to look how we can address these items on your agenda for the next year's meetings.
Yeah, I'd say thanks to Scott and staff for creating a great setup for this.
Mr. Chair, I think Councilmember Jones is.
So, Councilman Jones. Hey, how are you?
Hey,
All right.
I just had, I wanted to get some thoughts from council as we are going through the things that might tie into what you're already working on. So I like your work plan. I think it's very clear. Where we need help, maybe some guidance from you guys are on the specifics of what to look for stormwater conditions in a zoning case. That's something that always jumps out to us. So your guidance and like, what would be a good extra and beyond that we could, advocate for, because a lot of our residents, the cases that come through don't necessarily have a stormwater concern, however, residents do. And so like, all right, how do we meet in the middle and try and make that happen? And then secondly, we did our council retreat on Saturday and we began talking about legislative agenda. We've been talking about this for a few years, but this time I was really focused on making sure that when we talk to the state and we say what our priorities are, that we begin to include infrastructure like stormwater, like water. So again, your thoughts and ideas on what we should say to the community, because that our legislative agenda is our goals for the community to see. And I really want them to see that we prioritize infrastructure. So what does that look like to you? And we already have a whip there, and so he's already talking to the lawyers about what that could look like. But keep that in mind, and as you guys are doing this great work, know that we value your feedback and definitely need your assistance in making sure to prioritize that. So thank you guys so much for your work.
With the zoning cases recommendations, are you looking for some like ideas of what those conditions would look like?
Yeah.
Some language?
Yeah.
I'm thinking they probably would.
Well,
the
staff has shown us some examples of some prior conditions that have been reviewed and or less in a way that was positively seen.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were tied to green infrastructure, but there is I think a collection of them that we feel like we've seen through various cases and or that we should be able to get to. Yeah.
Yep, and we'd be glad to revisit those if there's the needs. They are published in the previous SMAC minutes.
Okay.
We can bring those back forward, so everybody.
Yeah.
And
Maybe
the thing that you've always reminded me of is the state regulations. They supersede everything else. You can't go from, so you just have to keep that awareness.
Yes, and generally that is true. There are some provisions, especially when the state statute is very clear that it cannot be exceeded. There are some areas that we can exceed slightly sometimes. Usually though, we provide incentives like the green stormwater infrastructure. We try to incentivize going above those steps.
I just think it's really important to know that because that's something that I didn't understand. That is something you have to consider.
There's something that the state doesn't regulate, detention. They don't tell you a year. So
Correct. That's a good
you can
example.
go, yeah, that's when you can go to. There's certain things that the state regulates that you have to follow. There's certain things that they don't regulate, like detention. An example.
Correct. So an example of what Commissioner Dalton's talking about is we are in the Neuse River Basin. And so there are Neuse River Rule Basin requirements that you treat at least one, I think it's 1 inch. The first inch of storm in a stormwater detention. But that's more of a water quality focus. It doesn't have peak flow control requirements in the state regulations. Those come from our federal permit that we have to have a program that has post-construction peak flow controls. And then the city has chosen to control the 2-year storm, which is about a little over a 3-inch storm, and a 10-year storm, which is a little over a 4-inch storm. So that is this peak flow control standards the city has chosen to use to meet that federal permit requirement. But those peak flow controls are not mandated by the state.
But in cases where you have thought, help me understand that you can't require, say, a developer to do more.
That's correct. And I think another item that you may be thinking of is there was a state law passed in 2021 that prohibits the city from requiring stormwater treatment of existing impervious area during development. So especially downtown, if you have a property that is 95 or 100% impervious already and it's being redeveloped, the city does not have the authority and cannot require any stormwater controls on that redevelopment. We can only regulate if it went up a little bit. We could require stormwater controls on that incremental increase only. And that is the state law. That, I think that may be what you're referencing.
And the state's defined built upon area too, like a very long definition of what built upon area consists of, that municipalities themselves can't redefine.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we actually did have to make some UDO changes recently to clarify our definition of built upon areas to be consistent with the state law.
I think that something we put on the future agendas is just to get a 30-minute briefing on the city's stormwater regulation.
Yeah.
And or erosion control, land disturbance regulations, just so that we kind of, Josh, you're more in the business. I'm a little bit in the business. You probably dealt with it for, some of your work, but yet not everybody's maybe, and things have changed too a bit. So we don't need a deep dive, but just a kind of, hey, we regulated 2 or 10 of this or that, kind of stuff. Yeah, because that's, once we put it on video, then it's part of our meeting and it's out there as well. So we can say, hey, if you go back to so-and-so meeting, that would be great for, if you get a question, so.
Yeah.
Sorry, when I speak to this, the difference between our regulations we just did in 2024, we updated our design manual, what we require, those that are previous, you haven't seen to follow those. So when I have to explain that difference of what we're doing now, that's a little bit confusing for me. So your assistance in that would be much appreciated of saying, in new development, it may be different, back then they didn't require this, but now we do require this. So that not assuage constant fears. It's, and you guys are, preaching to the choir, but the community who is coming into rezoning is beginning to learn that their emotions are running high. And I want to make sure that we can calm their fears. So how we get all that information would be really helpful.
Or at least it's like
Exactly, nothing to change. I just want those words in like a level that they can transmit.
Yeah, brief overview timeline with them, Sorry, more work for Ben and Sally. but You may have something dialed up already, so,
Having a video, that's be referenced.
Yeah, would be great.
Just,
Yep.
they're hearing it.
Yeah, and to condense it, because there are so many details.
There's some very deep details.
But it's something that would be educational for a lay person even.
So we heard at the conference this past week that humor is what makes videos happen, so. It's for comedy in these videos too, so.
So put dad jokes in our presentation.
So we'll start with the agenda as kind of rolling that out on an agenda, and then some other way that it'd be great if there were an educational component that could be rolled out beyond maybe just this meeting.
Absolutely. Is that something you would like for us to update work later? Do you feel like it's already reflected enough and just put that on the agenda?
Yeah, just put it on the agenda, at least for me.
There is a public.
Tactical, resolution.
The way to serve the work plan, yeah, exactly. Any questions on the work plan? We haven't taken action on this yet, so we should. Motion to approve over here. Second from Luann. All in favor of the work plan? There we go. All right, thank you.
Thank you all.
For that, yep. And thank you, Counselor Jones, for your comments. Wayne is gonna talk about what he did this past Monday up in Asheville. And he had two partners in crime, in that there was the North Carolina APE, American Public Works Association Stormwater Conference. And Josh was in attendance as an attendee. And Samantha and I went along with Wayne to present a 30-minute session about Raleigh Stormwater Management Advisory Commission. We also were able to attend the conference. So that was really awesome and enlightening. There were 18 Raleigh staff members there. There were, 500 people from across the state. And you want to go deep dive on stormwater, this is the place to do it. And so really, really interesting learning sessions. And so appreciate the opportunity that the city put forth to Samantha, Nicola and I. Nicola had a conflict, but it was nice to have that opportunity to do that. So.
Yeah, thanks very much. And this is the first year that we made that offer, plan to extend the offer to future SMAC leadership of those three leadership positions within SMAC to offer to attend this conference if you would like to do. Mr. Chair, appreciate the feedback. I do think it's very helpful not only to get that perspective of what we're doing here in Raleigh, but how we compare to other communities and ideas from other communities, and sometimes even presentations from other states as well at that conference. It's not only in North Carolina, but I think it does give overall good perspective, well-attended conference, keynote speeches from state climatologists about climate change and impacts and projecting rainfall, predicting how rainfall is going to change with climate change scenarios in the future. A little bit scary, I'll be honest with you, some of the projections that they were making. Dr. Bill Hunt's presentation is always a highlight of the conference, looking at all the research that he and NC State University are doing related to effectiveness of stormwater controls, looking at rainfall and peak flow managements and monitoring of water quality devices to see what type of nutrient removals we're getting. So we do have we've got about 15 minutes. And as Mr. Chair said, this was a 30-minute presentation. So I'm going to go through it really quickly. But a lot of it is stuff that right? That we wanted, the more we talk about it, the more unique we realize this commission is across the state. This is not something that every community has, but we think it's so beneficial from a community input perspective, from a staff getting feedback from the community. Mr. Dalton, I think you said Carborough has one, so that is another example, but there aren't many others of this. So we think it's a unique entity that we would like to share, how it works and what the benefits are with the rest of the state. So you all know this, purpose and activities, what you do all the time. And the seats, again, and this was a change that was made in 2019 to provide, again, this guidance to city council. It's ultimately always up to city council, the folks that are appointed here, but we'd like to have these different perspectives to represent the diverse viewpoints of the community. So development industry, property owners, HOA, you'll recognize yourselves in many of the seats, and that's intentional, and I think very beneficial to have that broad range of perspectives as well. And I think most of you are aware of this history, but if not, our stormwater utility fee program was started in 2003, but before that, there was quite a large stakeholders group that was formed, and appointed by council that met over about a year and a half, looking at the city's level of service for the stormwater program at that point. And after that review, the conclusion by the stakeholders group was, we want the city to do more with your stormwater program, both in terms of flood control. They had a lot of capital improvement projects, but no dedicated funding source to construct them. And there was a big backlog. So this, after meeting for a year and a half, the stakeholders group made a recommendation to council that they wanted an increase in level of service of the city stormwater program, and also then recommended implementing the impervious surface based fee, monthly fee that everyone pays now on your water and sewer bill, to fund that stormwater program. And the immediate impact of that was, after being implemented, the city stormwater budget went from about 6 million to about 12 million, after implementation of that. We're upwards of 40 million now. So we've come a long way since then, even with level of service increases. But this stakeholder group is what started SMAC and the commission. Meetings are streamed live. Graham, any comments you would like to make?
Change the photo. Yes, I did kind of had the next 4 or 5 slides and talked about, you know, the reason why I serve, and it's in, you know, the professional side, the personal side, and things like that, and then kind of our role and how we do it. So the next slide kind of gets into the meat of the, you know, the idea. I talked a bit about the meetings, how they are public, how we have to advertise, how we have to get the agendas out. This isn't, you know, kind of a fly-by-night situation. Also that they are during the day. There, you know, we're 20 staff people that are here, so it's not it's preferred to be during the day so that we can have the great resources of staff here. So there's a lot of very intentional elements to the meetings. Talked about our work plan and how we have to, you know, given our mandate from council, you know, the idea of work plans and annual reports. That's what we have to do. The alignment with cities, you know, city council, strategic plan, and or strategic initiatives. Just wanted to show that there was, while we're a resource, we also kind of have, you know, we fit inside the umbrella of, you know, serving city council in that regard. I talked a bit in this one about the mission and vision statement, and how we've, you know, the idea that we are advising in our own thing, basically, and not just at the department of, you know, the stormwater department. But then I talked a lot about the map here, just showing that 2025 and how, you know, complementing the work of SMAC and Reverend Taylor and stuff, and the emphasis on changing that map over the last 5 or 6 years. There were so many dots in very specific areas of Raleigh. And so Raleigh, the city has embraced this idea of changing how they're looking at projects and how they're, you know, treating stormwater. So talked about rainwater reward stuff, and how we, you know, kind of approve funding for that, drainage systems, stream stabilization. Justin and Stephen were in the presentation as well. They were attendees and thankfully didn't ask tough questions. Talked about one of the fun things we get to do is, you know, for Earth Day, and this is Environmental Advisory Awards, and it's kind of morphed into the Earth Day event, but stormwater always has a component there, and that's what we get to do, and we get to vote on the youth and teen awards. So.
Commissioner Samantha Crop was there presenting. She couldn't be here today, obviously, but I think did a nice job talking a little bit more about the liaison role that she serves in between SMAC and the Planning Commission, and this evolving role of weighing in on stormwater related issues for rezoning cases that have some particular stormwater related concerns. You know, if there's a lot of floodplain issues, if there's in a water supply watershed and there's water quality issues associated there. So did a nice job reflecting on SMAC's evolving role related to that. Talked about the field trips and the benefits of taking commissioners out into the field where real projects are being implemented, and getting to actually have hands-on and firsthand understanding of the benefits of the projects, as well as the maintenance activities. And these pictures on the right were from a couple of years ago where we did a tour of our maintenance facilities and got some demonstrations of some of the equipment, the television inspection equipment and the jetting equipment and vacuum equipment. And we'll put that on the agenda here again, because we probably have some members that are new since we did that tour. Talked a little bit more about the rezoning cases, again, water quality and settlement issues, green stormwater infrastructure opportunities, or supply watersheds.
Well, with this, and also Samantha talked a bit about, this came from the council table.
Correct.
So this came, a few years ago when the downtown south thing was happening. Councilor Branch said, so when it comes from the council table and it's a mandate at that level, we have to then address it and deal with it and or, adopt that approach. And so just kind of tying that back to what we do. And also now that it's a priority, we have selected that as a high priority number one moving forward this year, right? Because we see the influence and or impact and or our interest is there. So it's kind of tying those two things together.
Yes, no, very good point. And it was in this FY25 plan, higher priority than in the proposed FY26, which then goes to city council for review and approval, and they endorsed then that they would like you all to continue in that role. She gave an example of a case up in the Falls Lake shed that you all have been involved with. I think that was a good case study of some of the influence that you all were able to have in terms of ideas for conditions that ultimately were volunteered and adopted as part of the rezoning case. And then really just a summary, and I gave this summary because you all see the benefits and you all have your own reasons for participating, which we appreciate very much, you volunteering your time. But, I always also want to emphasize our appreciation because this really helps us. I've been in the stormwater business for 37 years. I forgot what I didn't know, right? So it's always important to ask all of those questions. There's no bad question, right? And we need to hear that, because if it's a question in your mind, it's a question in the broader public mind as well. So that's a huge value. It's good for us to have a sounding board for new ideas that we may have that we would like to bring forward. To have the public forum every month where community members can come speak about their questions or concerns of stormwater issues as well. And it's another community liaison opportunity that you all help us with, and that we can use these meetings for liaison purposes as well. So very much appreciate your role. And the presentation, I think, was very well received. Got a lot of good feedback at the conference on the presentation and questions. So we'll see if other communities adopt our model or not.
And it was the last session of Monday. So it was right before 5 o'clock, and, but we got 4 or 5 questions and, it was nice to get that. And then our planted, commission member in the audience raised his hand and was like, oh my gosh, what question is he gonna ask? And he said, I'd like to make the motion to adjourn. Nailed it. Awesome. It's a great way to end the conversation.
Really.
Yeah. But once again, appreciate the opportunity. And I think the other thing is, you guys know of places to learn about stormwater or places you have, you're seeing out there, or just share that with everybody, even if it's local or regional or something national. We, share via email if we want to. We can't have board meetings via email. We can't have, motions or conversations that way. But I think, definitely share resources if you see something out there that you think may be of interest. Or if you want to share it to Wayne and Scott, they'll share it back out when they send out the agenda for the next month. They'll be like, hey, these are some things people said. That's totally fine as well.
Yeah. I had some good conversations with several local municipalities that do not smack or slack, whatever you call it. They're very.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the Holly Springs guy was really interested in the R3, the drainage assistance, the stream statement, like spending the money or how is the structure? How is the structure? Yeah. Yeah, so. Yeah, thank you, Gary. Thanks, John. Yeah, thank you. And with that, I guess, any other topics, comments? We have, brief agenda items that we can, we'll keep tracking with Scott. He is building the matrix. We've talked about a few things today as well, but Scott will kind of build us a framework. One thing we have talked about is maybe in December, we will vote on the calendar for the next year, knowing that we may adjust it. 2 years in a row, we have biffed a Jewish holiday, basically messed up and and we haven't recognized that. And that I appreciate Samantha saying that, but I feel really bad that she's had to miss 2 meetings in the last 2 years because we landed on a Jewish holiday and we were not able to adjust in time. So we'll definitely work with staff to kind of look at things like that moving forward. But also if we kind of vote on a calendar in December, then we can all kind of set our own meetings and stuff like that, It's good to see things. And we'll probably still look to take July off. Right?
Go ahead and make that decision early.
So yeah. So with that, I guess any other topics, conversations? You want to make a motion to adjourn? All right. Seconded by Mayor now. All in favor? There we go. Thank you, guys.